Hi, this is Eunice Palacios Ramírez, licensed marriage and family therapist, and today I'm going to talk to you about how can you heal your brain from trauma. During this presentation, I'm going to talk to you about what happens to your brain during trauma and how can therapy be helpful to heal your brain from trauma. I'm also going to talk about a very powerful tool called Brainspotting. So I refer to a traumatic event as this bomb that rocked your world, that was something that happened out of the sudden without any warning, that was scary, that left you distressed, and where you felt you didn't have control on what was going on around you. It's almost like this event that broke your world into pieces, that maybe broke you into pieces, and you are left shattered. So a traumatic event can be something that happened directly to you, but also it can be something that you witness, that you listen to, that you watch. I often hear in therapy how traumatic is to witness domestic violence and how common is domestic violence. And then here I have many examples of traumatic events, from rape to being in an accident to witnessing an accident, poverty, a medical procedure, the loss of someone, bullying, going to war, the traumatic experiences that happen in military service, abandonment, neglect, migration. So if you see all these experiences might be something that is unexpected, where you did not have control on what was going on around you, or that you did not have control on what was happening to you, and that you felt unsafe. Trauma happens often alone, is experienced alone. However, and this is something that I heard from a colleague of mine, healing happens in the presence of another. And that other sometimes is your community or is a therapist. And maybe you were alone in those key moments, but therapy can be an opportunity where you go through those moments with someone else, with a therapist, with a safe presence. And I believe you cannot go through trauma and come out of it unhurt. It is going to affect you. However, when we go through trauma, sometimes we don't have the opportunity to stop and process what happened. We just have to move on with life. We have to take this big bite and just swallow it without even understanding what just happened and move on with our life. And when you don't have the opportunity to digest that big bite, to digest the experience, then later you have symptoms. The same way that if you eat a big bite and you don't digest it and you get a stomach ache, the same way with trauma. You go through this enormous experience that you don't get to process, and then you have symptoms of anxiety and depression. And sometimes that happens after, it doesn't happen right away. When I live in Mexico City, I had an experience where someone broke into our house. It was a very traumatic and scary experience. And at that moment, I was able to free myself from the situation, get help. I was able the same day, hours later, go to the police station, make a report, made a description of the suspects, and I was okay. 15 days later, 3 weeks later, I was really anxious. I was scared out of the sudden when someone approached my car in traffic. I was scared when our phone rang. I was scared when the doorbell rang, and I couldn't concentrate in class. So these symptoms happen after, and often that happens in trauma. And then we have also effects in diagnosis such as post-traumatic stress disorder, where the person is left hijacked by the experience. They feel as if the experience is happening to them again and again. They have nightmares and they relive the experience, and that is an effect of trauma. So before I talk to you about what happens to the brain during trauma, let me talk to you about the brain. Let's think about as if we have three brains: the neocortical brain, the limbic brain, and the reptilian brain. The neocortical brain, this is in blue, is the decision-making brain. It's our logical brain, the one that is able to do executive functioning, the one that can do math, the decision-making rational brain. The limbic brain is our emotions, and the reptilian brain is the oldest brain, the one that has kept us alive as humans all this time, is the one that protects us in a situation of danger, that helps us to survive. And then we have the amygdala. I like to refer to the amygdala as this smoke detector. It's sort of the one that um, sends the alarm to the brain and to the body and says like, danger, 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 at the first sign of smoke, at the first sign of danger. So what happens to your brain during trauma? What happens to your brain during trauma is that your brain will do this. Your cortex will disconnect, your limbic will disconnect, you will go into your reptile brain and you're going to fight, flight, or freeze. You're going to run from danger, you're going to hide, or you're going to pretend you're dead. Um, I like to put this picture of a tiger because if a tiger were to enter here where I am, I'm not going to go with my neocortical brain and say, let me think what kind of tiger this is. I'm not going to talk about my feelings about the tiger of how pretty it is or how I feel about the tiger. No, I'm going to go and run, hide, or I'm going to pretend I'm dead. I'm going to go into my reptilian brain because that is what is going to make me be alive. And Dr. Daniel Siegel refers to this as flipping your lid, right? And that is what happens when we face trauma and when we face danger. So what happens to a brain that is like this, right? It's a brain that is not going to be able to engage the cortex. It's a brain that is not going to be able to concentrate in class, for example. So this is why trauma has big effects for learning in children. But also when you have your your lid flipped, you're going to try to bring your flip down. You're going to try to recalibrate. And when you do this often and through the years, because you have been exposed to trauma often, that explains also the symptoms of depression. And of course, if at the first sign of danger, your amygdala says, danger, danger, and you do this often, then you have the symptoms of anxiety that can go from I'm worried to full PTSD, experiencing the situation as if it is happening to you again. And if your amygdala is exposed to situations that feels threatening often, your amygdala becomes more sensitive and reacts at the first sign of danger. So if you think about the amygdala as being this smoke detector, imagine that if a smoke detector is exposed to fires often. If fires happen in that apartment or in that house, in that room where this smoke detector is and happen often, happen every other day, every weekend and through years, that smoke detector is going to be super sensitive and is going to set an alarm at the very first sign of fire. And of course, there are many diagnoses associated with trauma, such as anxiety, depression, acute stress disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, panic attacks. And I always say when it comes to trauma in children, always to rule out for ADHD, and that can be done through testing with a psychologist. So how do you heal your brain from trauma then? I believe that anything that is mindfulness, anything that brings you to the here and now, that helps you to recalibrate, that helps you to be in the here and now, that tells your body this is not happening again, this might feel real, but here and now you're safe. Anything of that nature helps. Of course, therapy, because as I said, healing happens in the presence of another, and you can revisit all those experiences in the safety of a therapy room and in the safety of a therapeutic relationship. I believe also that any person, all of us, like carry knowledge inside us of how to deal with our problems. And I believe we are resilient. We come from generations of people that have survived trauma. So some of that ancestral knowledge we carry. And if we can access to that knowledge, I think that's helpful. And with Brainspotting, I have some ideas of how to access that knowledge. Faith, people have often tell me how their faith, how their relationship with God, how their spirituality helps them and give them strength, how they have felt that, for example, during trauma, they weren't completely alone, that they felt God was with them. Um, any resources that can be internal resources, like something that you can access, like peace inside you, that part of God inside you, your friends, your family, your community. Of course, medications, especially with acute stress disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, um, with anxiety, with depression, like that's very helpful. And I believe the best combination is medications and therapy. I have here a picture of a service dog. I was in an event here in San Diego with an organization, and they were sharing their stories. And like one of the gentlemen, one of the veterans, was saying how his dog, his service dog, helps him ground him. That how his dog brings him to the here and now, and that even when he is having nightmares, his service dog will jump on top of him and will ground him. And just the safety of that relationship. So there are many ways to deal with those symptoms. So how does psychotherapy allows you to heal trauma? I want you to imagine that you have this backpack with stories, and maybe many of those stories are stories of trauma, but you haven't been able to look at those stories and integrate them and understand what happened. So imagine that you arrive either to the virtual room or to the therapy room, a physical therapy room, and you take off this backpack and you open this backpack and you unpack each one of these stories and understand and start to understand what happened to you, how it affected you. You put words to those experiences and you make meaning of those experiences. And you do it in the safety of the therapy room, in the safety of the presence of a therapist, in the safety of the eyes of a professional who, if you dissociate, is going to bring you back, who is going to hold your hand through this process. And as Dr. Siegel says, it is not what happened to you, it is about how you make meaning of it. So trauma resides in the limbic brain and in the reptilian brain, in the green area and here in the yellow area. So a way to access this part of the brain when I'm using a model that is based on talk therapy, when I'm talking, asking questions to the client and the client responds and we have a conversation, the way this process looks like with, for example, emotionally focused therapy, that is one of the models that I use. Um, it's almost like my questions and the way I'm guiding the process, it helps the client to go into their brain, almost like we get into this elevator and we go down. We go to a level where they can experience those emotions that maybe they have not put words to. Another way to access and to process trauma in therapy is through expressive art. Here I have a picture of a santry. How this will look like in therapy is that the therapist will have on display, maybe on bookshelves, many figurines available. And the client will grab those figurines that they feel drawn to, and the client will create a story in the santry. And this is a way to access trauma, to process trauma, to organize a traumatic event without putting words to the specifics of the traumatic event. The client is assembling the experience, is organizing the experience, is creating meaning, is accessing resources. Maybe the client is creating an alternative ending to the story, or is placing a figurine that represented a resource, or that represent a resource that wasn't there, but the client is not putting in the story. And it's a way, as I said, to access traumatic content under the cortex, because when we do art, when we do expressive art, we do it from the midbrain, and is a way to organize the experience and to make meaning of the trauma. I have a sound tray in my therapy room and different figurines available for the clients to create a story in the sound tray. When doing sound tray virtually, there are virtual versions of sound tray available. And the client will create a story, but with digital characters, and we will be sharing the screen, and I will be able to see the world they created and the story they created in the digital soundtrack. Even though in this drawing you see that this might be a young person or a child, this kind of work can be done with adults. It's not only for children or for minors. And a very powerful tool when it comes to healing your brain from trauma is brain spotting. Brain spotting was developed by Dr. David Grant, and brain spotting allows you to access under your cortex by focusing your sight in a specific point while being completely present. As I said, trauma gets stored in the midbrain and in the reptile brain, and there is a way to access under the cortex with talk therapy. As I said, expressive arts, and when I use emotionally focused therapy, there is a process to get there. However, I could say that brain spotting has been sort of a shortcut to get faster there, to get faster into this area. And the way we do that is that we use a natural process, right? If you look at the picture on the left, there is this dog just locking eyes in a specific point. And this is something that we tend to do. And maybe now that you know this, you will catch yourself like doing this. But it's something that we do naturally, that we lock our eyes, lock our sight in a specific point. And what is happening when you are focusing your eyes in a specific point is that you are accessing under your cortex. If you look at the picture on the right, and you will see the eyes are connected to that part in the midbrain, and you are accessing into your midbrain. So it's almost something like this, right? So I have a brain here, and I'm going to focus my attention in a specific point, and that is going to allow me to enter into the midbrain and into the reptile brain. So what brain spotting is allowing me to do is like accessing this area that with talk therapy I'm mainly here, and then I might ask questions or do a process where the client can go back and forth here. But with brain spotting, you are completely here. You are completely in the midbrain, in the reptile brain, like, and you're accessing those capsules of trauma um, that are under the brain cortex. And once you open those capsules of trauma, your brain does what your brain naturally can do. Your brain will heal itself. Dr. David Grant developed and created Brainspotting. I believe the story is that he was working with a professional ice skater who couldn't do triple jumps in there without falling in competitions. And she also had a history of trauma. And I believe he was doing EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And as he was like moving his finger in front of her eyesight, that is something that is commonly done in EMDR. I believe she had a physical reaction in a specific point, and intuitively, he decided to just stop there and have her focus her eyes in that specific point. And I believe what happened is that a whole lot of traumatic content was processed there. And I think the story was that the next morning she called him and said, I have been doing triple jumps in there without falling. I've been on block, like I've been cured from this. When I do brain spotting in a session, my clients have bilateral music that goes from one ear to another, one ear to another. If we are doing this online, the client will access this music through Amazon Music, iTunes, or I provide that music. It's very easily able to find. And we will talk about, what is the issue that we want to work on. Let's say that maybe the client wants to talk about, the fear, or is talking about, the fear that they feel when they remember witnessing domestic violence, right? Maybe someone that is coming to see me because of anxiety, and as we talk about this, we see that, they experience fear when they bring up this issue. So we will pay attention to where in their body do they feel activation as they are talking about this issue. So let's say that the client says, as I'm talking about this issue, I feel my chest is getting activated. So what I will do is that I will bring up my pointer, and I will say, okay, like I'm going to move it in 3 different points, here, here, and here. Where did you feel your chest activated? And maybe the client will say, you know, it's here in the middle, like I felt it more. Okay. And then there, I will go a little bit to the right, to the left, up and down, finding that specific point where they say, you know, it is there where my chest is feeling activated, the most activation. Maybe also another way to do it is like, I go like this, right? And where they say, there is where I feel the activation, or where I see a reaction from them, like maybe they blink, they swallow saliva, I will stop. The idea is that we are finding that specific point in the brain where this traumatic experience is stored. If you can see the drawing that I have here, it's like your body is dialing up to your brain, which is the central, and it's finding that specific capsule where this trauma is stored. Once you locate that capsule and that capsule is open, the brain takes over. The brain is wise. The brain will heal itself. Your brain will create new connections, will reprocess the experience, will rewire itself. Um, Not only do I use brain spotting to process trauma and to find activation spots, but it also can be used with finding a resource spot. Like, let's find that place in your body where you feel calm, where you feel grounded, and let's find that visual point where you have the greatest access to that grounding sensation, to that peace sensation. Um, Going back to the drawing that I have here, the brain is connected to your body, and a way to access to your brain and to access under the cortex of your brain is with your body. The body will remember trauma, especially when it comes to the trauma that was preverbal, that we can't remember. The body remembers. So the body is the key to the brain. So brain spotting is not hypnosis. The client is in control. The client is not being manipulated. The client is in complete control. And it's just simply like this tool that allows your cortex to stay in the back burner, like the bilateral music, and maintaining your eyes in a specific point. It just sends the message to your cortex, you are in the back burner. The activity is here. And once you get into that specific capsule in your midbrain, in your reptile brain, you are just getting greater access to that capsule. Your brain is opening it and it's healing. It's almost like if this is your brain and this is your cortex, like it's like you go through the cortex and you get to that specific capsule. And I place this picture of an onion because it's almost like you go layers into the brain, as I said. So brain spotting has gave me great results. Like I have done this kind of work online, and I can see how my clients' face, like in the screen, like I can see how when they are in like really deep into their cortex, and when they are with their eyes focusing on a specific point, I can see their pupils dilating, the eyes moving, eyes flickering, wider eyes. They swallow saliva. I have been able to help people access preverbal memories and make new connections. And if you want to find the research supporting this, you can go to brainspotting.com, and you can read also about the research that Dr. David Grant has done with the Sandy Hook parents from that school where there was a shooting some years ago. And personally, I don't do anything in therapy that I don't believe in and that I haven't tried. So this is something that I have tried. When I went through the trainings, I had to try it. I had colleagues do brain spotting on me, and it was a very powerful experience. So how does a brain spotting session looks like? The client will bring in a specific issue that they want to work on. We process on what is that emotion connected to this issue, and then we'll link that emotion, we'll link this issue to a body location. Where is in your body where you feel access to this resource, to this peace, to this grounding sensation, or where in your body do you get activated as you talk about this fear, or as you talk about this sadness. The client has bilateral music going from ear to ear, and then I bring out my pointer, or I ask the client to gaze a spot, to look around the room where they are. But what is important is that when the client finds that spot, or either I bring out my pointer and I see a reaction in them, or they say, this is the spot, this is the spot, this is the place where I feel like I have activation or where I have access to that resource. When you are doing that, your body is dialing up to that number in your brain, to that central in your brain, and finding that specific point, that specific capsule related to that issue you want clarity on. And then the client just maintains full attention, keeps listening to the bilateral music. I intervene, but I don't interrupt the process. It's something that is a very organic process. Some clients might like share and talk as they are processing. Some of them like describe the experience they are having, the images they are seeing. Some of them not. And I think that's the beauty of brain spotting, that the client is in control and that your brain will go where your brain can go, and your brain will make connections and will heal. My interventions might go into like getting maintaining attention and maintaining attention to being maintained in the midbrain or in the reptile brain, but the client is in control. And then usually a little bit before we end the session, like we put a pause to the process, and then I usually ask the clients how the experience was for them. And I like to refer to brain spotting as those, I like to compare it to those workouts that you keep burning calories after, because after a session of brain spotting, and this has happened to me because when I went through the training, I had brain spotting done to me. Like you continue processing after, like you might have more vivid dreams later, you might continue making connection, like your brain keeps processing. So as I said, I don't try anything with my clients that I haven't tried myself and that I don't believe in. And when I went through the trainings on brain spotting, I had to practice brain spotting with other therapists, either being the therapist or being the client. And the experience for me, it felt like I was deep into my brain, and it felt like I was daydreaming, but I was present, and I was like watching the complete story of whatever experience I was processing on, but there was some distance, like it felt safe. Um, there were thoughts that were coming, stories, images, even some preverbal memories, also some distressing memories. But at the end, I felt less activated about the subject, right? When my therapist that I was practicing with in the beginning did a scale and said, okay, from a 0 to a 10, where do you feel activated? How do you feel about the subject? And at the end, it usually always went down, and when it went up, I think that it meant that I got greater access to that issue and to that experience. The pictures that I'm putting here is because it relates to the experiences that I worked when I was in the training. So, for example, one experience that I work on was that I was worried and scared about a motorcycle accident that my brother had. And as I was doing brain spotting with my colleague, and I'm talking about, my fear of something happened to my brother and his motorcycle and the accident, I started like really deep into the experience to look at this image of this Harley motorcycle like riding on the highway, and my brother rides a Harley. And then there was this eagle like riding along the motorcycle. And then out of the sudden, like this thought came to my mind, and it wasn't something rational, it was just something that happened. And I said, oh, my brother is a free spirit. He's free like a bird, and he has always been this way. And this is the way he conducts himself in life, and this is something that I like about him, that I admire about him. But this was something that I just came out of the sudden, like it wasn't something that I was reflecting on, or that I purposely made that thought come to my mind. Also, I, saw the experience of, his accident, even though I wasn't there, like, but also I saw this imagery of the bird, and at the end I felt less activated about the subject. I put that picture of the baby because also in one of the exercises that I did doing brain spotting, I was able to access preverbal memories. I remember the day after the training, like I called my mom and I say, "Hey, I was doing this training and we did this exercise, this practice. We practiced brain spotting, and I remember I was like in this front yard that was yellow, and there was a blue chair with a blue cushion that I have seen in the house where I grew up, and there was this man next to me, and he was wearing yellow, or or some sort of that color, like yellow, something yellow, and he was next to me, and I felt warm, and I felt safe, and I just felt that this man liked me very much, and like that it was a very pleasant and warm experience. And my mom says, like, "Oh my God, that's your grandpa. That's my dad. Like, you used to sit on the front yard and take the sun together, take a son back together, in the last 6 months of his life that he had lung cancer, and you were like a year and a half, and you will sit next to him in a little chair, and he will sit in a blue chair, and he will wear yellow or beige, and you will rub his back, and you were his everything to him. He loved you very much." And I swear to you that I experienced this love that my grandpa felt for me, and that it felt real, that it felt that I was there with him. Saying this, I'm not saying that this is going to be your experience with brain spotting. It could be different, but I just thought it might be helpful to share my experience with you on how it was for me. And as I said, I don't try anything with my clients that I haven't tried myself. And as I said, your experience might be different. I also have used brain spotting to access an internal resource. So as I said, I have used brain spotting to access traumatic content, to access activation, but also it can be used to access that part of your body that feels the most grounded, that part of your body that where is your healer, that part of your body that has a stronger relationship with God, that part of your body that feels that that piece of God is there. And as I said, many people have told me that even when they were going through a traumatic event, they were not alone, that God was always with them. So I always like to bring that spirituality when it comes from the client. I never impose it, that grounding, that peaceful sensation into the healing process. And as I said, I have used brain spotting to access that part of us that has a connection with God, that part of us that has that peace of God inside us. And it's never something that I impose to the client. It always comes from the client. If my clients say, spirituality and my relationship with God is really important, like then I can bring that into brain spotting. When I have done this, I'm brain spotting for me, when I have practiced this like with other clinicians for me as a client, and I have connected to this God spot, I have found like that point in my eyes where I feel that I have access to that piece of God inside me. The sensation that I felt, it was the same sensation I felt when I um, take communion. I grew up Catholic, and I remember on Sundays when I used to go to Mass and I will take communion, like I will be surrounded by God. I felt held by God, and the sensation was similar. Um, Other tools that I integrate, especially now that I'm doing a lot of teletherapy, online therapy, is that I integrate anything that is mindfulness. Especially when I'm working with trauma and I'm doing brain spotting and I'm doing this online, I ask my clients, I want you sitting, on a chair. I want you being barefoot. I want you to feel the floor with your feet. I want you to be able to touch something. I want you to listen to my voice, follow my voice. I ask them, have cold water with you. If you have a pet, have your pet next to you. So anything that helps my clients ground when we're doing this work online, and if we are working on trauma, I find it always helpful. Um, I believe that also if for example with anxiety, a lot of anxiety is just thinking about all these things that could happen. I believe also we can use our mind and our imagination to heal and to access those internal resources. Um, Other things that are helpful when it comes to the brain and trauma, as I said, mindfulness, there are many apps that have guided meditations. Working out, I think is really helpful because when you're working out, you have to be fully present. An example I say is like if you hold a plank, you have to be fully present, engaging your core in total contact with your body in the here and now to be able to hold a plank. And as I said, expressive art, that's always helpful because I believe that when you are doing art, you are doing it from your midbrain and you are processing. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm trained in brain spotting phase 1 and phase 2, and I'm on the road to become a certified brain spotting practitioner. In January 2021, I'll train in addictions and brain spotting, and I will also get additional training on how to integrate spirituality with brain spotting. I consider myself a trauma-informed therapist, and I really believe that this tool, that brain spotting, allows people to access that internal ancestral knowledge that they have inside them. I truly believe people have that knowledge to heal themselves, and I believe that we all have that internal healer inside us, and just brain spotting allows us to access that healer. And I like to share this tool with others. This is why I'm doing this presentation. I'm taking new clients, regardless if you take therapy with me or not. I just want to share about this experience. Feel free to visit my website or give me a call or send me an email to ask for a free 20-minute consultation. I'm licensed in California and I can work with any person located in the state of California. I have also credentials to do therapy in Mexico. I'm bilingual. I speak Spanish and English, and I work with couples, high conflict couples, couples who are considering divorce, couples going through infidelity, and with individuals who have gone through trauma. And I'm also a positive discipline educator. Thank you for watching this presentation.